Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Chef Matt from Kansas City's Roth Living Showroom, and I want to welcome you to the culinary scene here at the Roth Living Showroom in Denver, Colorado. A beautiful snowy day here, and we're going to do a virtual version of our Wolf Convection Steam Oven ownership class for you today. And we're going to cover all of the functions of this oven as well as the use and care. I also want to point out that we're going to have some beautiful food coming out of the oven as the class goes along to give you some great examples for what you can use this oven for. I do have another Wolf Convection Steam Oven on the other end of the kitchen that Chef Gill's going to pass off some food to me as that becomes ready. So you can see that coming out of the oven nice and hot and steaming as well. So I do want to point out a little bit of industry speak. So today when I'm talking about the Wolf Convection Steam Oven, you might hear me refer to it as the CSO, and that's just a abbreviation. Just for the economy of speaking so many words, we're going to refer to it as the CSO, but it is the Wolf Convection Steam Oven that we're doing. That's the only appliance we're going to cover today, okay? So I want to start off with enlisting you to really not be afraid of trying to cook some things in your convection steam oven as soon as you get it installed, okay? Now, to get that convection steam oven ready, first off, you're gonna go ahead, open it up, make sure that any packing's out of that. You're gonna notice that you're gonna have 2 of the oven racks, as well as you're going to have a perforated steel sheet pan and a solid sheet pan, okay? And we're going to refer to how and when to use those as this class goes along so that you can really get the best performance out of that oven. So I want to start off with, we've gotten the oven installed, we haven't turned it on yet, we're going to open it up and we're going to take a sponge. Now let's cover this real quick. We're going to cover cleaning later, but the initial cleaning, you can use a blue scrubby. If all you have is a green and yellow scrubby, you can only use that if it's broken in. We want to really use something that's softer than that green scrubby. It's more abrasive. We don't want to mar up the finish. And really, we're just doing a little initial cleaning anyway. You could almost use a little damp towel or kitchen towel with a little bit of Dawn on it, okay? And you're going to go in and around the cavity, and then you're going to wipe it out, and then you're going to go ahead and go to the quick start menu and select convection, and I want you to turn on that oven to 440 degrees and just set a timer for an hour, okay? We want to burn off any of the odors, any of the little bit of oil or adhesive, anything from the factory, okay? They don't, quote, detail or wash the cavity of that oven out before it's shipped out, so we're going to take care of that before we go to cooking it. That way, if we bake off some cookies or a roast or something, there's no off flavors at all. Now, from there, you're going to go ahead and turn it off, and once it's cooled off, you are ready to rock and roll, having fun with that oven. This is the next step. You got a cookbook with this oven, okay? And I will point out that the emphasis or the purpose of this cookbook is not to show off how great a recipes the Wolf chefs have. It's to get you going on, well, what would I do first? So you'll notice in the table of contents, everything is categorized by the mode in the oven. And so you can simply find something that you already make, that you have a recipe for or something similar, and pick that recipe. Now, use, for example, you have a meatloaf recipe, and they've got a meatloaf recipe in here. Maybe your mix is a little bit different. Go ahead and make your mix, okay? But I want you to try the method, okay? The probe system, as well as maybe the temperature you cook it at, the mode you cook it at. Try the method that they're suggesting, okay? So you can find out how that oven works and why it's really going to work the best in that mode, okay? Also, this little placard card comes in your ownership packet, that paperwork that you get with the oven, and this has some great quick references for vegetables, meats, grains, and it's all in columns. It all spells out to, you're going to use this temperature recommended for this amount of minutes, even the position of the racks, all of that. So that is a guide to really get you on your way to cooking with this oven and really getting the most out of it right out of the gate. Now, I will tell you as we go along, I'm going to show you quite a few different modes on this oven. I don't want you to be overwhelmed, because if you're tuning in right now and you've got this link, down the road, if you've forgotten something, you can use the link in the email that we sent you to go back to this video and watch it, forward or rewind to the parts that you want to review again. That's going to be there as a reference for you in the future. All right? Now, so the timer is going off. So I've got a little surprise for you. So the oven is telling me that slow roast is finished, and something cooked to 138 degrees with a probe, if you see that little icon there. So we're going to go ahead and just hit enter to confirm. Oh, would you look at what I got in the, wait a minute, wait. Is that a prime rib that I'm pulling out of the convection steam oven? Okay, but wait a minute. I was expecting to tune in and Chef Matt's going to steam a bunch of stuff today. No, actually, I will tell you, I'm not steaming one thing. I'm going to roast a lot of things, and I'm going to slow roast, and I'm going to do some other things, but I'm not steaming anything, okay? So I'm going to go into explaining how to do this, but I want you to really take in the beauty of this really nice prime rib. I'm pulling the temperature probe out right now. Look at the crust on this, okay? Beautiful crust. Now, I will tell you that I did, with this size roast, use a little pan. You could also use your Wolf griddle. You could sear something outside. I just gave a little bit of a crust, but look at that, okay? And in a few minutes, I'm going to dare in just a few minutes to slice that open, okay? So we're going to go to the specifics on how I did this in just a minute. But I do want to tell you that I actually planned for that roast to be done at about 6 after, 7 after, 3 o'clock today here Mountain Time. All right? So I actually told the oven when I wanted it done. All right? Now, let's talk about the oven as a whole. I want you to think about the CSO as an oven first, not as a steamer. Yes, the first mode we're going to talk about is steam, because we got to get that out of the way, okay? But you're going to use this oven for so much more than just steaming. It is an oven first, but it has steam capability. Now, let's start off with the mode of steam. When I go to steam, or when I wake up the oven, let's say I power it off first, and I want to wake up the oven, I can simply touch the quick start button, okay? That's going to call up the first 6 modes that I'm going to go through with you. We're going to go one by one. The first one is steam, and when I press on that, rack position 2, 1, or 4, and those are spelled out along the sidewall here, okay? Also, I want to call your attention to the control screen. This is not a touch screen. This will do nothing if I touch it. All of your controls for this screen are going to be over here, okay? Now, this first icon is going to be a back button. So we'll go over here, back button. That means if I hit enter, it will go back to the previous screen. The next is going to be a probe icon. That means that I can use a probe in this mode. Now you'll notice I have a little counter that's counting down right now. That means I need to make a decision, or it's going to go ahead and start. Next, my temperature control from 210 degrees full steam to 90 degrees. And I'm going to go into specifics on what I would use for that range of temperature. And then I've got set duration. So that's my timer. Now, you'll notice nothing pops up. It tells me I've got 10 seconds to 9 hours and 59 minutes. When I hit the up arrow, that's when the 15 minutes default appears. So you're always going to need to go up arrow just to the right of the enter, and that's going to display what your default time is. From there, you can set whatever time you want, from 10-second increments below 10 minutes up to that 9 hours and 59 minutes. Okay? And then, once I've set that, this over here is going to tell me when it's going to be done. that end time. And I can set the end time in some operations. So that's something you can play around with if you don't want to start something right away. All right. And then this last icon is going to be our start. And that's where if I hit the button right now, it's starting into that steam mode. Now we're going to go ahead and stop it because we're going to talk about steam for just a minute. So when are you going to use steam? You're going to use steam anytime that you're dropping something into a pot of water on your range top or your cooktop. Minus, you can cook pasta in a pot in the convection steam oven. Now, personally, I don't like to open the oven and stir the pasta, keep it from sticking to itself or clumping up. But other than that, potatoes, rice, vegetables, anything, eggs, anything I'm dropping into boiling water or bringing up from cold water to a boil, I'm going to use the convection steam oven. The reason why is speed. It comes up to temperature so fast. Number two, it's really efficient at even cooking, and I'm not leaching any flavor out of the potatoes, out of the vegetables. I'm not losing any nutrients with the steam factor, whereas when you do add food to a pot of water, that does release or does extract some nutrients and some flavor. So your flavor on your foods that are steamed in this oven are going to be more intense, going to be bolder. You're going to enjoy the texture of those whipped potatoes or Duchess potatoes much more than if you were to boil them and they start to get a little bit watery, okay? And they're going to be bland. You have to use more salt or seasonings to make them taste good, okay? Now, if you use that simple rule of, oh, if I'm dropping it into water, you know what? We love the Wolf range tops and cooktops, but this might be something that you just don't need to use it for unless you've already got something. You know, if I'm making a pasta dinner at home, then I'm going to cook the pasta on the range and the sauce. I might be roasting the vegetables in there, okay? So really, this is an accessory oven that is going to end up being very popular in your kitchen in that once you understand how it functions, you can assign tasks to that oven. Hey, you know, my wife and I really discuss what we want to do at dinner. Hey, do you want to roast the vegetables in the convection steam oven tonight, or do you want to do the potatoes in there? What do you want to do in our dual convection oven, or what do we want to do in the cooktop? And we really have come down to we have favorite dishes that we like coming out of the convection steam oven. So that's when we cook it in there instead, okay? Now, the next mode, are they ready, Gil? All right, come on down. Gil's gonna bring down the other dishes. Oh, look at those. So we've got some really nice little Colorado fingerling potatoes that we used. Okay, you ready? We're gonna talk about this mode in a few minutes. We used the mode convection steam to roast these. And you see how they're kind of wrinkled on the outside, a little bit of blistering, okay? And how nice is it to make a roasted potato dish and, oh, I don't have to really cut up the potatoes. These are already small enough. I can simply make one or two cuts on these, and they're so delicious. Just a little bit of avocado or olive oil on these, and we've got some beautiful, yummy potatoes. And then, oh, okay, I know a lot of you out there love some roasted Brussels sprouts. I'm going to bring up this in just a moment. So can you see the char on those? Look at how nice those are. Oh, I know I've got to zoom in right here. Look at those, okay? Look how nice those are. So, you know, I roasted these from a raw state, and now they're nice and tender in the center, and they're crispy on the outside. And that's actually exactly what I want when I roast a Brussels sprout. I don't want to be chewing the Brussels sprout for 5 minutes before I take my next bite. And so tenderizing those vegetables is really big, okay? Now, we're gonna go ahead and get the rest of these out on the tray with that prime rib. You know, I know a lot of families that would be really happy if they were to get this set in front of them at dinner time. And you might say, well, that's great in that you have 2 convection steam ovens in your kitchen. Well, You know, you could actually slow roast that prime rib, pull that out, let it rest for a little while that final half hour, 25 minutes, half hour, your potatoes and your Brussels are roasting, and then you've got it all done out of the same oven. Who would think that you could make a family dinner that size from one oven? But you can, okay? Now, I want to slice into the prime rib while I'm thinking about it, okay? And I'm going to go in about 1.5 inches from the end so I can show you the eye of this prime rib, okay? And I selected a nice medium for this. Now, this did rest as part of the process for that. You see that beautiful pink center? And we have that brown crust all the way around, but the eye of that prime rib is just solid pink, wall to wall. So that's a really beautiful roast. That's restaurant quality roast that you're doing in your home. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a few minutes. All right? So let's move on to the next mode. We'll go back to quick start. And we're going to go over to convection. So convection, when you go into convection, you're going to notice you have your back button, your probe. You're going to have your temperature controls from 90 degrees up to 440 degrees. All right. Also, you're going to have the ability to set time on that. You can use a probe, as we talked about. Now, when am I going to use convection? And it's important to note, there is no straight bake cycle on this oven. The heating element is behind the wall back here by the fan system. So, because all the heat's coming from behind the wall, the bake system on how it works on our dual convection ovens is the heat comes from the bottom, okay? We have to use a fan to circulate the heat in this oven. So as a result, if you've got a recipe that calls for 350, let's use chocolate chip cookies, for example, or some brownies. And the brownie recipe calls for 350 degrees bake for 30 minutes. Then I'm going to adjust my time down 25%, okay? I'm going to set the timer at 22 minutes or so to start. I can always add time. I can't subtract time from a baked good. And I'm also going to lower my temperature to 325 degrees. Why? Because the oven in convection mode is that much more efficient at cooking those brownies. It's going to get them a little bit crispier on the skin. It's also going to get them done faster, okay? And convection is a very even cooking mode as well. Food can be in the oven for a long time on convection and cook very evenly, okay? So convection, the trick is, especially when you're doing baked goods, not as key when you're talking about potatoes or some vegetables. You can kind of play around with the temperature you like on those, but on a baked good, you always want to lower the temperature 25 degrees and the time 25%. It's the 25-25 rule. Make a little note of that on one of your recipe sheets, just so you make sure that you cover that, okay? Now, what are you going to do on convection? You're going to roast meats, you're going to roast chicken, you're going to roast some vegetables, sometimes without steam, sometimes with. You're going to bake cookies, brownies, breads. There's a whole plethora of things that you can do with dry heat, no moisture included. And on the lower temperatures, in the 110 to 160, you can make some beef jerky, you can dry some fruits, some vegetables. In the lower 200s, you can do slow roast modes or slow roast temperatures on some different meats. When we're talking about in the mid to upper 300s, that turkey dinner coming up, yes, there's a lot of people that like to do their turkey in the convection steam oven. And you can do that on convection, or you can use convection steam that we'll talk about in a few minutes. So lots of different things to do on convection in those temperatures. When we're going up into the high temperatures with convection, then more than likely we're wanting to do some browning and some crisping and caramelization on what we're cooking. That's why we would go with the higher temperature and that airflow, okay? Now, let me get a drink real quick. Okay, the next mode we're going to cover is convection steam. Convection steam is still an oven. The bottom temperature is going to be 180 degrees because that's when we can start to inject steam into that process. Top temperature 440. When am I going to use convection steam? There is a whole list of recipes in the cookbook as well as on our website. We have recipes for convection steam modes, and Sub-Zero Wolf's website, they have recipes as well. Lots of different ideas. I'm going to tell you some uses that are really popular at my house. I love to oven roast my small potatoes or my vegetables on convection steam. Here's why. When I roast my Brussels on convection steam, I do it at 425 degrees, and in the process, the steam is breaking down the fiber of that cruciferous vegetable, that fibrous, chewy vegetable. So it's making it more tender by breaking down the fiber. It's also, at a higher temperature, above 400, it's charring. So above 400, that moisture in the air actually inhibits browning and crisping. So we get a very browned, crispy vegetable. Broccoli, yes, cauliflower, has a lot of water in it, but it still comes out with some nice brown edges. Asparagus, there's so many different ones you can do with this. The carrots also, we love roasted carrots. That's a great way to do roasted carrots because carrots are very chewy and fibrous. You gotta break them down with some steam or some moisture. That's the perfect vehicle for some nice baby carrots, some heirloom carrots like they have at the market now. Great vehicle or avenue for cooking those, all right? And then when we talk about the potatoes, potatoes are very stubborn in the time that they take to cook. They're still gonna take a good half hour, maybe 35 minutes to cook when we're talking about roasting. They're going to get crispy on the outside. We're going for a creamy center. And if you want to really crisp them, you can steam them first a little bit and then cut them in half and throw them back in. It really depends on the style of potato that you're doing. All right. When we talk about the root vegetables such as potatoes, carrots, beets, these are going to benefit from that steam in the process of the roasting, and that we're going to get the caramelization, we're going to get the crisping, but it's also going to be cooked in the center, which is really important. We want that center fiber broken down so that it's a more pleasurable experience. If you've ever had a great roasted potato that's so crispy outside, but when you bite into it, it's like just a light, fluffy little pillow of starch, okay? That's what we're going for, and that's what this achieves when you use the Wolf CFSO, okay? Now, let's talk about a few other temperatures with convection steam. So you can do a whole chicken in the 375 to 425 range with convection steam. Poultry, you generally want to go a little bit higher if it's going to be there in a while so that it renders more fat out of the skin and gets crispier and browner. It's going to come real close in crispiness and brownness to just doing the whole chicken on convection. The difference is when you add in the steam to the process, then it's going to speed up the cooking time. So when we cook a chicken, I will point out, we're going to use the probe. I'm talking about that as part of one of the next modes that we're going to cover, okay? So you can really cook poultry on a multiple list of different temperatures. You can choose if you have a favorite temperature that you go by, then start out by decreasing the time and the temperature a little bit. I do encourage you to use that probe. I don't really recommend cooking a chicken for an hour. I'm going to tell you to cook that chicken at that high temp with the probe to a specific temperature, okay? Now, in the mid 200s to low 200s, I told you I'm from Kansas City. I finished some of my barbecue in the convection steam oven after it's come off the smoker outside. Instead of wrapping up my spare ribs or my brisket or my pork butt, we have a joke, we smoke everything in Kansas City. And we're not afraid to put anything on the grill and make it taste yummy. So that meat that normally in a barbecue competition or even your backyard barbecue enthusiast would wrap up and put it back on the smoker, I simply put my ribs on the oven rack, unwrapped, sorry for the noise, over the solid pan, and I will use that temperature probe to continue to cook those ribs to the temperature I want. So that's really nice. I don't have to run in and outside anymore to rotate the ribs around or to wrap them to do all that. Simple. So simple way to take care of something like that. Also, Chef Gil made a dynamite pumpkin cheesecake with a gingerbread short crust for a party we did yesterday. And he actually wrapped the entire pan with plastic wrap, and he cooked that cheesecake at about 220 degrees for an hour and a half, okay? And it made it like a custard inside, a really creamy, silky cheesecake. So there's a lot of different really neat stuff you can do with convection steam, just playing around with the recipes in the book, following our content, and seeing all the different things that you can do with that mode, okay? I think that's gonna turn into one of your favorite modes once you've played around with it and see what it does to your food, okay? Next is gonna be convection humid. Now, convection humid is not adding any moisture to the cabinet or to the cavity of the oven. It's sealing the heat in the oven so that no moisture can escape that the food might be giving off. So let's use, for example, a lasagna. A lasagna typically we cover with foil because we don't want it to burn, and we want it to kind of steam itself in its pan. And then we usually set a timer at a certain time to peel back the foil and let it brown off. Well, the oven traps the moisture that the lasagna is giving off, and it keeps it from drying out or burning. And it also allows it to brown more evenly so that when that lasagna comes up to temp and is done, you've got a really nice golden brown crust on top. It's nice and hot and bubbly in the middle and not dried out because it trapped that moisture. You didn't have to wrap it. There's going to be so many things that you don't wrap in this oven. You don't put a lid on in this oven because it's using the moisture in the cabinet to assist in the cooking process, okay? Now, some other things that are really beneficial on convection humid are going to be, you can cook your meatloaf on convection humid. You can cook muffins and quick breads. So a banana nut or a cranberry orange bread for the holidays. Some muffins, how about some blueberry white chocolate muffins or some chocolate orange muffins, whatever flavor you like. Those actually are a very wet batter. They're nothing like a bread batter. And because they're damp or wet, then they give off steam as they bake. The oven traps it in there, and it ends up doing a really nice job of the crusting and browning process in that baking, all right? So, I talk about the Wolf gas range ovens sometimes and the moisture in the air that the gas fuel provides when some of the moisture doesn't burn off, and the baked goods in the Wolf gas oven do beautifully. This is mimicking trapping moisture in the cabinet that food gives off, and as a result just gives you beautiful loaves of those quick breads. The holidays are coming up, and to honor my grandma, I'm going to make her zucchini bread, favorite for us at Christmas time, and that's the mode I'll use at about 325 degrees, okay? So next we're going to go to reheat, okay? Now, you're going to be surprised. I would say this is in the top 3 or 4 modes of clients when I talk to them after they've started using this oven for a significant amount of time. They love the fact they can reheat foods with integrity, like a piece of prime rib, a fresh piece of salmon that you didn't finish last night for dinner. Maybe it's some Chinese takeout, that you've got that carton of the rice that's kind of crunchy and dry. You're just not sure what you're going to do with it. Okay, pasta's left over that might get a little bit dry in the refrigerator just because that's the nature of a starch to dry a little bit when it gets cold. Okay, this mode and reheat is from 190 to up to 300 degrees. I recommend in the low to mid 200s. Okay, that's a good point. But a steak dinner, for example, you've got a leftover chunk of prime rib, some potatoes, and some Brussels. You want to use an oven-safe plate. You can use it either on the rack or on one of the sheets. That's not going to matter because it's not going to be in there very long. But you're going to start with a cold oven. And you're going to program it, reheat, say 225 degrees. That, a nice 3/4 of an inch thick cut of prime rib that's about 8 ounces. I'm going to use about 6 minutes, maybe 7 minutes. Start, and when you pull that out, there's going to be just a touch of moisture on the plate below. It will evaporate, okay? That moisture dissipates. The moisture in the air, it's not steaming the food to reheat it, however, it's an oven at 225, and there's some moisture in the air. That moisture helps penetrate the foods to reheat them faster and more efficient. Your steak will still be very close to that pink in the temperature you want. So you can have that steak or that chop reheated really close to the original temperature. Now, yes, it will be brown on the outside, but when you cut it open, it's going to be a hot pink center, okay? And your starches, your vegetables, they crisp up and get nice and hot again, to where I've heard so many people say, oh my gosh, I eat leftovers that I never ate before because the food tastes as close to fresh that I just made as anything I've ever had. So play around with that reheat. It is a great, great mode to use. Now, I do want to point out, if I'm reheating some steak dinner on a plate, that plate is going to be hot. It's going to be 225 degrees. So you're going to need to use a towel to pull that out. Also, if you're going on to a countertop, a quartzite countertop that can take the heat, that's fine. Use the same plate. I'm teaching you hindsight's 2020. Chef Matt made a couple of mistakes. So don't set that hot plate, even if it's on a placemat, on your nice wood table, okay? It's a very hot plate. If you're going to warm up the plate, transfer it to a cool plate, okay? That way you've saved. I had to do a little repair on my dining room table a few years back because I just wasn't thinking, okay? So I'm passing that on to you. Now, what's a couple of other things you can use reheat for? So I made some nice artisanal French bread today in the convection steam oven. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But that's a bread that is just flour, water, yeast, and salt. Say that we eat about half that loaf over a couple of days, and it's starting to get pretty crusty. What is stale bread? It's dried out, okay? Simple as that. So I can take that loaf on the rack, put it back in on reheat for about 6 or 7 minutes at 250, and when I pull it out, it's not wet, it's not damp, and it's actually soft, pliable, and sliceable then, and it tastes really close to fresh out of the oven again. So reheating your favorite artisanal breads that are a couple of days old, refreshing some pastries, yes, some little dinner rolls that start to get a little bit crusty, yes and yes. I even refreshed, my wife made some biscuits last week, and some sourdough buttermilk biscuits, and they got put in the freezer. Well, I wanted to reheat them, and just about 7 or 8 minutes on the rack, and tasted like they just made right out of the oven. So you're going to be really surprised at what a great job the reheat mode does. Okay. Now, our next mode we'll talk about is sous-vide. Sous-vide is a mode where we cook. Sous-vide means cooking under pressure or under pressure, and that is actually as a vacuum seal bag, okay? Now, it is recommended that you eliminate the air out of the bag when you do sous vide. You can do some steaks, they're called bag steaks, in a freezer Ziploc, okay, that you press most of the air out. That's because the steak is only in there for a couple of hours. So you don't really have time for that steak to grow any kind of bad bacteria. There's no danger there. But I will tell you, if you start to play around with sous vide, then you'll want to check out the Wolf vacuum seal drawer. Or if you have another brand of vacuum seal, play around with that and see how that works for you. But sous vide is, I'm going to use a steak, for example, which you get a sous vide steak recipe in the cookbook, okay? And we'll use a ribeye steak, for example. I'm going to take some raw ribeye steak and I'm going to season it on both sides. Maybe I put a couple cloves of garlic in there, a sprig of thyme, maybe a pat of butter, and I'm going to vacuum seal it, and it's going to go on the rack in the oven, sous vide. And if I like a steak medium, then I'm going to set the temperature at about 132 degrees, maybe 133, a few degrees under where I want to finish that steak. And I'm going to set a timer for 2 hours, okay? A steak like ribeye is more tender the longer it cooks. So I'm going to set a timer 2 hours. When I pull that out, it's going to look kind of like I cooked a steak in a bag, okay? There's going to be some juices in there. I promise you it's not going to be dry. You're going to cut it out of the bag. You're going to pat it dry on both sides, and you're going to preheat a cast iron pan on your Wolf range, or if you've got a griddle feature or an induction even with a little griddle plate on there, and give it a nice sear for about 1.5 minutes on both sides, and you're going to have a 4-star steakhouse quality cut of steak. It crusts up beautifully to a really nice blistered, charred crust on both sides, and when you slice that open, it looks like that inside, perfectly cooked wall to wall. And honestly, it's one of the easiest ways to do 10 steaks for a dinner party that are all cooked perfect. So very easy to work with and to play with. Play around with that. There's lots of resources on the internet for reputable recipes for sous vide. We're going to be doing some in the coming months for our culinary scene, and we'll have those posted as well, okay? Now, we went through the quick start modes up here. We've got a few more modes we're going to go through. We're going to go down to more. In the more category, more is recipes first. Now, recipes section is where in the ownership packet that you get, there's a page dedicated to how to program in your own favorite recipes, okay? And program over 10 recipes of your own mode, temperature, internal temperature, time, whatever it is, whether it's a cake recipe, a cookie recipe, a turkey recipe, you can build that recipe to your specifications. And then when you go to cook that meatloaf, that cookie, you simply touch favorites and you scroll through and you find that recipe, you put the food in and start. So there's less steps to go through when you build your favorites, okay? From there, we've got more gourmet, and I'm going to touch base on a couple of the more gourmet, okay? So when we go enter and go into that, frozen and fresh appetizers. Fresh appetizers and frozen appetizers are things that you have picked up at the market for when unexpected company comes over and you need something to pop in the oven right away, okay? Fresh appetizers could be crab stuffed mushrooms, jalapeno poppers, little bacon wrapped scallops, okay? Any of those things. Frozen appetizers can be some crispy things that we want to get in there and crisp up real fast. So the fresh is just going to ask you how you want it brown, light, medium, or well. The frozen appetizers is going to ask you for package instructions, okay? So you're going to look on the back. It's going to adjust the time accordingly. I will tell you, if you've got a package that recommends 15 to 18 minutes, then this oven's going to program in about 23 minutes because it knows it needs about 5 minutes to get to temp to do what you want it to do, okay? So it's going ahead and equating that time. And then another highlight to more gourmet is frozen potatoes, frozen potato products, okay? So I talked to many families out there that they'll tell me, look, we don't have a deep fryer anymore. And when we do smash burger night on our Wolf griddle, or we're cooking them on the Wolf outdoor grill, and we want some crispy potatoes to go with it, whether it's oven fries or tots, this is the route to go, okay? This method is better than an air fryer in that it's using moisture in with the high temperature, and It's going to crisp those potatoes. They're going to taste really close to fried with no oil, okay? And here's the beauty of it too, is you know how many more potatoes you can fit on this over an air fryer? Okay, this is a whole lot more. It's going to take a few more minutes, but you can do enough for the whole family. You don't have to do it in batches, okay? So, does a really great job. My kiddos love tots, fries. They love those little breakfast potato patties. And we even did a test where we cooked some on our Wolf griddle for breakfast one morning. I did some on the solid sheet pan in here. And guess what? The oven version beat the griddle version on those little potato patties. So you'll be really surprised at how good a job it does on those frozen potato products. Okay? Now, we're going to back out of more gourmet and we're going to go on to the next mode. If you know me from any of the videos from Roth Living and our YouTube channel, you know I love some bread, okay? I love to bake bread. There's just something magical, did you like that, magical, about taking flour and a little bit of yeast, or maybe you're doing a starter, and some water and a little bit of salt, mixing that dough, having it come together to where it's creamy, and you're just not sure, did I do it right? It doesn't look anything like bread, but after you do some proofing in your oven and some shaping and a little bit more of a rise, your oven turns out this just beautiful, shiny, crispy crust artisan bread, okay? So auto steam bake is that mode that mimics what a professional bakery's oven does. They have steam injected ovens that actually start off with full steam the first 5 to 10 minutes. Sounds kind of weird to steam bread before you bake it, but that's how you get that grain to open up very sponge-like and very light. Also, that's where that beautiful crust comes from, okay? Forget those recipes where they tell you to throw some ice cubes in the bottom of an oven in a pan or spray the sides with mist and close the door right away. Once you see what this oven is doing to that loaf of bread, you can't even see in the oven because there's so much steam the first 8 to 10 minutes of that cycle that you'll be like, okay, that's just not the same at all. I'm just going to go ahead and use this mode, okay? So a great way to do breads, rolls, so many different things in that. And when we go into auto steam bake, you can do artisanal breads, braided breads, like a challah or a I'm trying to think of the other one, a buttery bread that's a braided, where normally you have to brush a lot of egg on those. Don't got to do that with this. Also, puff pastry. You're doing a brie and crude or some little pastries for breakfast that are out of puff paste. Don't need to brush those. The moisture is going to do that for you, okay? And then we can also proof. Now, when we back out of this category, the next category we're going to go to is slow roast. Slow roast, this is a game changer with this oven as well, okay? This is the mode that I did the roasting on. Let's talk about the probe for just a minute, and then we're going to go into specifics, okay? Now, you've got yourself a Wolf CSO or convection steam oven. You've also got a Wolf dual fuel, or maybe you've got an M series oven or an E series oven. So you got a probe with both of those. I want to point out that the probe that comes in the ownership packet with both of those is a different color, and they function differently specific to that oven. So the one that comes with your M series, E series, or dual fuel is blue. That blue wire matches the blue interior of the oven. An easy way to think about it. It's color coded to match that oven, okay? If you plug it into the convection steam oven, it'll work, but it won't read the right temperature, okay? The black wire is the one that comes with your convection steam oven, and that's the one you're going to use for all the temperature monitoring in this oven. Now, where do you plug it in? It's a little side flap on the side right here that thick part of the jack plugs into, and we insert the probe into the tip and the thickest part of the roast, and the needle needs to be completely buried like that, okay? Now, that being said, I will tell you, When you want to use a probe is anytime you want to monitor a protein you're cooking, okay? In culinary school, they don't teach us how to cook proteins by time. They cook us to cook all proteins to specific temperatures. If we're talking about beef, it's always a rare, medium, all of those temperatures. Same with pork, okay? Same with fish. Also, your poultries, okay, want to be cooked to kill salmonella in some of those poultries. Some of the poultries that don't have salmonella, you're cooking them to a certain tenderness or juiciness, okay? Rendering the fat out skin, whatever it might be. I'm using the probe. I'm not going to give you a recipe for cooking chicken for an hour. I'm going to give you a recipe for this oven to cook chicken to 165 degrees with that probe. And I promise you that chicken will come out juicy, tender, and delicious when you use that probe to cook it, okay? Now, when we talk about roasting slow, we're not doing poultries. You're going to notice, and I'm going to go through the mode with you. So when I go into slow roast sear, that is the mode that's going to start with a higher temperature oven, and the temperature will lower down to an ultra slow roast. Okay, so we're confirming we're using the probe. Now we can do veal, beef, pork, and lamb with this. And in those categories, these are the larger primal cuts. A strip loin roast, a ribeye roast, a leg of lamb, a leg of veal, a pork loin, a pork shoulder, okay? Many different cuts that are primal. They take longer to cook, to tenderize them, to keep their juices, and this is the beauty of this mode. You get to tell it when you want it done. I'm going to show you how to program for a beef tenderloin, for example. So we're going to go over to beef, and we're going to select tenderloin, and we're going to select rare or medium. So let's go back to rare. We'll confirm that we're using rack position 2 right in front of the fan. And then we're going to look. If I say, well, you know what, 131's a little bit pink, maybe I'll go to 133, or you know what, I like it still mooing, let's go down to 125, okay? Whatever temperature you like, you get to go in that default temperature zone. Next, it's going to be, you don't set the temperature of the oven, that's automatic, okay? Next is the time, the duration. So this is really cool. You get to choose from 2.5 to 4.5 hours on when that roast is going to be done. You're selecting the temperature of doneness, but you're also selecting when you want it done. Now, a leg of lamb, a pork loin, some of your smaller roast, 2.5 hours is plenty of time. However, I'll tell you, something like a prime rib or a larger leg of lamb, they will benefit from that 3.5 to 4.5 hours. If I'm doing a large prime rib for Christmas, our holidays are coming up, I'm going to give you this little trick, okay? If it's a large 10-pound, 8 or 10-pound prime rib, this oven is going to need a little bit of help to get it to a nice medium temperature. That's a lot of meat to cook in a super slow roast, so I want you to start your roast 2 hours ahead of time. Before it goes into here for 4.5 hours, I want you to use your other Wolf oven at 225 degrees to get it jump started. If you do that, you've got a nice 6.5 hour slow roast. It will come out beautiful, solid pink, tender, juicy. Your family is going to go, okay, what steakhouse did you order this from? So you're going to really blow them away with the quality of that dinner, all right? Now, so I've selected, say for example, to the minute, I'm going to cook this for 3 hours and 39 minutes. My coworkers are like, you're cooking it for 300 minutes, Jeff? So 3 hours and 39 minutes. So right now, by that time, dinner will be ready at 7:28 tonight, all right? So I can tell it to the minute. And from there, I'm simply going to start. Now, it's going to ask me to plug in the probe so that I can start that process. I'll go ahead and stop that. So don't just use this for parties. Use it for your average dinner during the week when you want to plan out when that pork loin is going to be ready, when that leg of lamb is going to be ready. Small roast beef that you shave up for some little sliders with some horseradish. So any of those, this does a wonderful job on slow roasting meat. Really play around with it. Have some fun with it, okay? Now, next, we're going to go back down into that more category. The next mode from slow roast is auto reheat. Now in auto reheat, the beauty of auto reheat is that you've got moist or crispy, okay? I highly suggest, hey, use the crispy mode to reheat your favorite fried chicken. Next time you've got some fried chicken left over, put it on the tray or on a plate, use that crispy mode. Now, you don't get to set the time, you don't get to set the temperature, okay? If I go into crispy, okay, it's going to be an automatic, it is 14 minutes. They have formulated how long it takes to reheat the average crispy food item without burning it. Trust it. We use it. It works. It does a great job. It's much better than throwing the food in a hot oven, okay? Now, we're going to cancel out of that. Go back, and the next one is going to be spa mode. So I'll bet some of you out there are saying, wait, I got a spa mode on my oven? Yes, you do. And with that, you can do some hot towels. You know what? You want to give yourself a free facial after a hard day. Go home. If your husband or your wife or your partner is not cooking anything, go ahead and pop some nice luxury towels that's in there and make yourself a nice little hot wrap for the face, okay? Or maybe over the neck after a hard day, any of that. You can also do massage stones, wraps, the cherry stone and grapeseed cushions, any of those to lay on the joints after a hard day at the gym or any of that. That's a fun one to play around with, okay? And then we've got sanitize. So in sanitize, we can sanitize baby bottles, whether you've got a newborn or you've got grandkids. And they only brought over a bottle or two, and they've got to sanitize it and get it filled again. So you're going to wash it out, put it upside down on the rack, and 15 minutes later, that oven is sanitized with steam, that bottle, and it's ready to use, okay? Now, the next category in sanitize you're going to see is preparing jam and jelly jars. I'm a canner. Love to can stuff. Make my own barbecue sauces, my own marinaras, my own pickled jalapenos, all sorts of stuff, jams and jellies. And instead of getting out these big pots and running my jars through the Cove dishwasher, I simply get them out of the case and sanitize them for 15 minutes while I'm making whatever concoction I'm cooking up that day in a pot. I fill them up, and then I use the same mode or in steam mode to actually do my canning or water processing, okay? And I will tell you, I have had a much better success rate canning water bath process with this oven than I ever had using a large pot on the range, okay? And in the middle of summer, when you're trying to do that stuff, it's really convenient to be able to use the oven over your stove to do that, okay? A lot less heat being generated, okay? Next mode is going to be keep warm. Keep warm is simply acting as a warmer from 160 to 190. I would lean towards this 160 to 170 at the hottest to keep your foods warm. Baked potatoes are going to be able to take 180 or 190, but most foods are going to be in that temperature safety zone, still nice and piping hot at 160 or 170. Okay? Now, that's the modes we went through. I want to show you the shortcuts now, which they pre-programmed in for you using those modes. So we go up to Gourmet. Gourmet has pre-programmed, okay, there's 10 vegetables right out of the gate that have the mode, the time, and the temperature set. It says broccoli, 9 minutes, it's going to steam it at 210 degrees. You're going to put it on the perforated pan. Anytime you're steaming vegetables or potatoes or eggs, perforated pan over the solid pan. This is your drip tray, the solid pan, okay? And so all of those vegetable modes are steam, okay? That doesn't mean you can't go in and oven roast the vegetables like I did with the Brussels, but they've programmed in steam for the vegetables, okay? Then we go over to meats. Now I do want to point out something important with meats. We'll go over to beef and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we'll choose tenderloin again. Now this gives me the ability to do slow roast sear like I did in that other slow roast category, or I can do low temp cooking. So instead of the oven starting hot and then dropping down gradually to a low temp, it just starts out low across the board. Some people like to sear their meat off on a grill or a griddle and then slow roast it the entire time. That's when you're going to use that low temperature cooking, okay? And in this mode, you're going to have veal, beef, pork, lamb, and sausages or other meats, hot dogs, things like that, okay? And you're not going to do poultry in that mode. You're going to go over to the next. Poultry is going to give you the ability to do chicken breast, whole birds, chicken legs, okay? Moving on to potatoes, side dishes. We've got the ability to do a potatoes au gratin. We've got the ability to do some roast potatoes, some potato wedges, sweet potatoes. Now I want to tell you what's going on in this mode. In this mode, it's got 3, 4, 5 different modes programmed in. We found that steaming the sweet potato works the best on this. Oh, we're using convection steam on roasted potatoes. We're using this mode on the potatoes au gratin, the convection humid. So they've already programmed in for you what they think does the best job on these things I'm going through for you, okay? So that is your potato sides, pizza, one dish casseroles, okay? Turkey a la king, lasagna, tuna noodle casserole, any of those, okay? Those are mostly gonna be convection humid, okay? There's some potato dishes in with the side dishes. This is all, there's over 50 pre-programmed recipes in there that they're gonna recommend how to cook it by time and temperature. Eggs, that's a really fun one on how to cook hard-boiled eggs. And don't judge the egg just by how it comes out of there. It's gonna be perfectly cooked. The chef tip is you shock it in ice water for 1 minute to stop the cooking, and then get it out of the ice water, just a room temperature, peel it right away, that shell slips right off. That's the trick to peeling it right away, okay? And then baked goods, this is a fun one. So we've got bread, cake, torts, rolls, cookies, pastries, all these different things are using different modes. They've already pre-programmed for you. We think the cookies are best on this. We think the tort's best on this. They've problem solved for you. So now I will tell you, over time, you're gonna figure out, oh, the oven's doing this and this, okay. And then you might end up actually just going to the basic modes, finding that mode to cook it, and you can adjust your time and your temperature and customize it to make it your recipe, okay? So once we're back, all right. So baked goods, grains, fruits for jams and jellies, making your own yogurt. That is a 7-hour process, okay? So lots of fun stuff to play around with. So this oven is really limitless when it comes to being able to cook so many different things in it. I want to touch base for a moment on 2 housekeeping things that are important with this oven, okay? The first one is going to be based on your water hardness. When you get this installed, I want you to go to settings, and I want you to find your set water hardness. You need to use a test strip that came with the oven and test your water hardness. It'll have a chart with it. You're gonna set your water hardness. From there, based on water usage in the modes, it's gonna tell you when it needs to be descaled. This could be 4 months, this could be a year, okay? You're gonna need the Durgall descaler made for this oven, okay? And you're going to simply go through the prompts, descale appliance, which is in settings. It will prompt you, the water cartridge will pop out, just like this. and it will tell you to pour the water away. You're going to fill it with this. It's a half-hour process. It's going to clean just the boiler back in the back. It doesn't do anything in here, okay? And then it's going to pop back out, and it's done. You're going to fill a couple of rinse cartridges that it's going to flush itself clean, and you're good, okay? Throw away that bottle. Just make sure you have one of these on hand so that when it does need to scale, you can go ahead and get it done, okay? And the other thing that I wanted to show you is we talked about a blue scrubber. This is really the one, or you can even use one of these when this is soaked in hot water. Right now it's very abrasive, but when you soak it in hot water, it gets a little bit softer, okay, but still very effective. But Chef Ben has a cleaning video on our YouTube channel on how to use something like the Barkeeper's Friend as a powder to run a steam cycle when you want to clean that oven. Run a steam cycle for about 10 minutes, and then you pour some of this in the bottom, make a paste, go throughout the interior, lightly scrub it down. You can wipe it back out right away, or you can let the Barkeeper's Friend sit on there for a few minutes to eat some of that grime off. The emphasis is we want to avoid scrubbing hard, even with this, okay? If it doesn't come off, you can do another cycle of that. The more often you clean the oven, the easier it is to get off. Now, you did a number on the oven, you roasted some chicken, and boy, it's just being stubborn. Or you're like me, my family just uses this oven all the time, and it gets pretty built up. We would be cleaning it every 3 days if we were doing it like we were supposed to. So, depending on how bad the food stain is on the back, you can use a little 1-inch utility paintbrush, spray some residential grade degreaser, okay? Any of the degreasers you can buy from the supermarket are a residential degreaser, and I want you to stay away from spraying any degreaser into the back ports. That's when you would use a paintbrush, paint it on back there. Just paint that degreaser on, let it set for a while. That interior is stainless steel. You're not going to hurt it with those. From there, that should wipe off. You can do the rest of the interior with the spray, wipe it out, and then run 1 or 2 steam cycles to rinse it a little bit, okay? From there, you're good to go to get cooking again and having some fun with it, okay? So we've covered a lot of ground today. Like I said, you've got this link to refer to it in the future if you want to review anything. I really want you to get in there and start having some fun with your Wolf Convection steam oven. You're going to have a blast. This is going to be a major player in your cooking day to day. You're going to have so much fun with this one. So thank you for joining me today, and we're going to see if we got any questions from anyone real quick. No questions? All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon, okay? Take care.